that I always wanted. I always wanted to be a priest since little girl. And then, suddenly, I saw myself, a well-known, famous priest without the right to do what I was enjoying. And I was delaying, I was failing to make the decision. I was failing to do what needed to be done. I went into a compressor role that was shutting down a lot inside me, and much of my essence was overshadowed. And nothing can make us more unhappy, my people, than when our essence is not respected, when what is true in us does not have its proper space. As much as you are apparently happy, accomplished inside us, a space is created, as if the consistency were ending, as if you were either the foundations of your home, just like a cement wall, no matter how solid it is. When our essence is not respected, we have created a space of great fragility, a fragility that will tell, that one day will scream. One day it will make a lot of noise inside us. And that was precisely that. This is precisely what happened to me. Suddenly, my ability to pass over all that, to have a life very contrary to what I was asking for the soul. This conscience I had at first. My God in heaven, I give my body a completely different treatment than the soul asks me. And there I dispersed. I treated myself in a dishonest way. I was very absent from me. Many things in my priestly life have been aside. And suddenly, I was sick. Father Fábio, who was often so whole in things, suddenly had to say that it was not so. That we get sick too. That as much as we want to be strong, to say that everything is fine, is not well. But it was so liberating for me, because it was also very good. Because I remember that when I started to be known, there is always that possibility of inventing a role, right? From you pretending something, for people to like a little more from you, that's a temptation. And I thought at the time and said, when the first opportunity came out of the walls of the Catholic Church, I said, I will be myself. It will be difficult. Imagine not being who I am now, if I have to become known, being someone I am not. And of course, I picked up a lot. It's a vain man, yes. I can't tell you that I'm not a village. I like to take care of myself. My whole life was like this, since little boy. Anyway, I chose to be myself, made my truth prevail. And thank God I always found very generous people, very merciful, who works with me, who extends my hand, which does not condemn me. And that's why I like to be like this, It makes no sense to be the priest of condemnation. First, because I believe in the God that gives me the opportunity every day to redo myself, to correct myself, to understand my mechanism. I believe in this manifested God and Jesus, who has a huge affection for the fragile, a merciful God who has a huge ability to welcome those we usually don't welcome. So my gaze could not be different. It could not be different. My presence in people's lives. What is a spiritual fear? When I do not face life's difficulties, when I do not encourage myself enough to challenge myself as a person, when I settle in my world, faith is an instrumental to make us advance these territories. The best way to overcome a fear is rationalize it. When you rationalize and talk, guys, because I'm afraid to sleep alone if there is absolutely nothing that can justify it, right? Fear of sleeping alone. Today, no more children have fear. I know. I understand this because I kept a lot in my heart, a lot of stupid fears that I was living. And as I became aware of them, I was moving forward and winning. Don't be afraid of being afraid. No, you'll win this there. I assure you it's not that complicated. Now, the biggest difficulty is when we incorporate fears, existential fears. These are dangerous in our lives. There are people who are afraid of being happy, for example. Why? Because of the numerous obstacles it brings inside the heart, of difficult situations that were not well resolved, right? It's that old story. The woman was betrayed by her boyfriend. Then the relationship did not work. ended up because of that betrayal. It will take the rest of its life the fear of being betrayed in its heart. So she will hardly establish another healthy relationship because she will always be suspicious. She will want to be possessive because she was betrayed one day. Will always work with the possibility of being betrayed again. It generates insecurity, and this is a very serious problem. There are people who are rooting these fears inside themselves and then become them. Then he is that person who is afraid of life, is afraid to try, who is afraid to go ahead, to go beyond. I closely follow such a process of a friend of mine that was, for a long time, hostage to your own fears. And how did she justify herself? Taking care of the mother, so she didn't travel alone, that her mother didn't want to, but deep down she was afraid. She had a number of fears about the things of life, all always justified. Because my mother needs me. The day the mother died, the structure of fear was on the flower of the skin there. Everyone could see, because he no longer had the reason he once justified. And now he had to assume himself as someone who is afraid, as someone who was too protected throughout his life, because his mother had done it with her. He created a protective structure and made her unconsciously believe that everything in life was dangerous. Funny, guys, how we are victims of it. Fear. It has to be a protective framework. Every time I'm afraid, I automatically have to look at the care that fear suggests me. I'll tell you something that I wouldn't tell you. No, I had an accident a little time ago and no one learned. I was in the house of some friends, right there in Bahia. There was a day off, and then I got to walk in that quad. Have you seen that? So, what happened? It was there, a couple of friends had a quadricycle. Very powerful, very fast. Gave me the first lessons. And I am not very afraid of speed. Then the deal was 850 cylinder. We all went. And then, 2 hours later, I was feeling Alain Prost in that business. And then, suddenly, guys, I, with a lot of confidence, was passing a very beautiful place. Was a ravine. Was about 5 meters high, and on the other side was already the beach. So, what happened? I, at a very high speed, did not pass a terrain of a lot of depression there, of much irregularity. At high speed, what did I do? I capped the 5-meter ravine, and if that quadricycle fell on me, it wouldn't even be left to tell. Because that's very heavy, right? And then, when I was overturning that business in the air, the first thing that came to me was, people, I need to go out under this business. Because otherwise, I'm going to die. And it was so fast that I fell standing, do you believe? I turned around the air. The quadricycle overturned in the air. And I fell to the little foot. I was still careful to bend a little knee so as not to damage. Even that, I reasoned. And then I saw the quadricycle continuing to roll up. Funny that at the time, the first sensation I had, I didn't have any scratches. But nothing absolutely. That's why I never told it to anyone. Only 2 people from my team who knew, because I had had a show that day, and then I got there and told them that it had happened. But at that moment, I lived a very interesting experience, because I saw how much in life I overcome fears. You have no idea how much I was a fearful boy. I was always very fearful, and at that moment of that rollover, I acted with a lot of courage. It was determining my security to face that moment of difficulty. I think if I had not gone through the human process, which I already went through, to start dealing with my fears, I was afraid of height. I could not get close. I was afraid of car. I was afraid of accident. Was afraid of fall. If you are suddenly too fearful and I live such a situation, it is very likely that I will have less chance. And it is interesting because the process of fears in us It signals to the care we need to take. Of course, never again. If I have the opportunity to walk in that business new, I never want to risk the way I was risking. Why? Because now it generates a fear within me healthy, which is the fear of learning. Well, I've already caught in this business. I know I can die. This is no joke. I need to be afraid of him. I can't go with great courage to things. A dose of fear is always good for the heart there. Do you know why? We get a little more balanced when dealing with the situations. I have to have confidence in my driving way, but I have to be afraid of the power of my vehicle, because it can make me exceed the limits. I will not remove you my life. I can die ahead of time. So fear in the right dose, my daughter, will always be important in our lives. The problem is that you cannot allow that fear to begin to prevent you from living. There are people who don't travel by plane. It is not because it cannot, because it has no financial conditions. It is because it is terrified of the plane. That friend of mine that I was telling the story is the same thing. He was break the whole body when he talked about taking a trip. He always had the dream of knowing the Holy Land. When we told her, you go to the Holy Land, even if it is tied to a dog collar, she wanted to die almost. And it was. He held on everyone's hand, took about 4 Lexotens, and took off to Israel. Buddhist life. But this, my friend, we have to be patient with her. Because only God knows how much she has overcome her fears. You also have your fears that you can make a list of all the fears you have ever had in life, and which one you have already been able to get rid of. Are many. It is the human process. There is self-confidence, but you know that fear, in his right dose, is only good, because he is part of our protection instinct. If I have to collapse again from a 5-meter high ravine, it's not like this. So don't be very afraid to deal with all this. And as you scratch the fears, you become a person where God has the most opportunity. It is always good for us to clean the spaces of our hearts, so that God will have an opportunity to act on us. It is always very good for us to give God this part. Lord, work in my heart today here because I want to be a freer man. That's what I wish you. See? May you not be afraid of life. May your heart be afraid, but may this fear serve you to protect yourself, not to paralyze you. Do not allow fears to paralyze you. Do not allow fears to erase the light of your eyes. I wish that the strength of God's heart may always be present with you, giving you the gift of faith, granting you the gift of discernment and balance, so necessary for life to be better and happier. Lord be with you. He is between us. Pour upon the blessing of the Almighty God upon us, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And during my period of illness, for you to have an idea, it is a result that I was building, right? No one gets sick overnight. No one gets panic syndrome overnight. No one is afraid of the people of the night to the day. No one gets depressed overnight. And I remember that my first sign was precisely on the road. A difficulty that was huge. People. You don't know how painful it was when you arrived at the event venue. When I had to get off the van, when I had to find people, it was something that wasn't in my control, you know? Who had panic syndrome, who had depression knows. It's not something you control. You decide rationally. I'll live this moment and it will be all quiet. It is not. It is definitely not. And what before me was a source of so much pleasure, such joy, such satisfaction. Suddenly, it was no longer. Then I started to take a resumption, right? For you to have an idea, when I launched my CD, I had a time when I had 25, 26 shows a month. Sometimes I went home once every 2 months to change my suitcase. And no health can handle it, right? Especially when you have a nature that asks for stillness. I was always like this. It may not seem, but I'm shy. Very shy. I face well. I'll have to talk to 1 million people. Not even cold in the belly gives me. I'm shy in interpersonal relationships, you know? If I arrived in a room that has 6 people, I get shy. I have no shyness with the crowd. I have shyness like that in everyday life. I am extremely embarrassed when people approach me to take a picture, and I know that people are looking around. All of this makes me very embarrassed. So I have a melancholy nature. Melancholy has always been part of my life. I was always a sad boy, let's say so. What an unfortunate life I have. It's not that. It's one thing I have inside me that I don't know where it is born. That ends up identifying a lot with everything that is naturally melancholy. So I was always like this. So suddenly I was no come and go, endless. I never had an end. I stayed in that come and go in a very different life from the life that I always had. I moved away from my origins, my roots. This life of great evidence, she has so much damage to us. You can't imagine. I always enjoyed being among the people, with people. What made me want to be a priest else was that the opportunity to listen to people, be with them. I think this is such an honest principle, you know, when you find that you would like to treat people as you would like to be treated. So many times in my life I had to be heard and I didn't go. In many moments of my life I wanted to be heard by someone. I wanted to receive a word that opened my horizons to help me think differently. And I didn't have it. I wanted to be a priest for that. I wanted to be a priest, to be able to offer people what I would like to receive. We are so needy someone who discusses us, right? No judgment, without expectations. Someone who only listens to what we have to say. Someone who puts us in the lap with the word, with the look. I feel like I did that a lot. This one, I think, is a gift that God has given me that I take very seriously, which is the opportunity I have to put people on my lap with my gaze, with my word. I have a lot of defects, many, but I have an almost natural ability on me, you know? To welcome people. I'm not afraid of people. So, suddenly I realized, Father,
from all of us at Path of Faith, thank you for being part of today's discussion. We value your input, so please share your thoughts in the comments. Show your support with a like, spread the message by sharing, and subscribe to stay connected with us on our journey of faith.